faithfully conveying value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today we'll be interpreting the book titled The Decisive Battle for China's Fate. Covering 1945 to 1949, it's the final volume of modern Chinese general history, authored by Long Chaowang, renowned Republic of China historian and director of the Institute of World History at Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. On August 15, 1945, Japan announced unconditional surrender. With World War II ending, the news brought nationwide jubilation. After years of arduous resistance, the Chinese people finally won precious peace. All sectors of society hoped China would break free from war and embark on a path of independent development. However, the Kuomintang regime, under Chiang Kai-shek, disregarding the people's strong wishes, brazenly provoked war to eliminate progressive forces like the Chinese Communist Party, aiming to maintain its one-party dictatorship. At the war's outset, boasting control over nearly all major cities, millions of troops, and naval air superiority, the KMT arrogantly claimed they'd eliminate the communists within 3 months. Given the KMT's 4.3 million troops versus the communists' 1.27 million forces, plus disadvantages in weaponry, resources, and logistics, both domestic and international opinion then predicted an overwhelming Kuomintang victory. Unexpectedly, the Chinese Communist Party won the Liberation War in just a few short years. Throughout the conflict, the supposedly weaker communist forces achieved successive victories, steadily eliminating Kuomintang troops until liberating all China with unstoppable momentum. Why did the seemingly powerful Kuomintang fail? And how did the Chinese Communist Party rise so rapidly? These questions have persisted for decades. In the Decisive Battle for China's Fate, 1945 to 1949, the author uses the Liberation War as the main thread, while examining how the Communists won and Kuomintang lost through political and economic dimensions. I'll now present this book in 4 parts, strictly following the original data and information. Part 1. Peace hopes dashed. The Kuomintang provokes war. Part 2. The strategic shift from full offensive to multi-front crisis.
Part 3. The decisive campaigns, Liusheng, Huaihai, and Pinjin.
Part 4. The victorious advance, crossing the Yangtze to liberate all China. Now for Part 1. The fading hope for peace. The Kuomintang provoked the war. After the war against Japan, the entire nation urgently longed for peace to rebuild their homeland. To this end, in August 1945, CCP leader Mao Zedong flew to Chongqing to meet Chiang Kai-shek, initiating GMT-CCP negotiations. On October 10th, representatives signed the Double Tenth Agreement, pledging long-term cooperation, avoiding war, and striving to build a new China that's independent, free, and prosperous. After the agreement's announcement, the whole country rejoiced. Kind-hearted people were naive. The KMT had no real peace intentions. It was just a show to lull the communists and deceive the people. In fact, during the Chongqing negotiations, the Kuomintang had already provoked military conflicts. In September 1945, KMT warlord Yan Xishan invaded the Shanxi, Hebei, Shandong, Henan liberated zone. Our forces decisively launched the Shandong campaign, wiping out 10 enemy divisions, nearly half of Yan's total troops. Afterward, Yan Xishan holed up in cities like Taiyuan, never daring to launch another offensive. A larger conflict erupted in northeast China, then China's biggest industrial and grain base. With abundant Japanese left equipment, its immense strategic value made it fiercely contested. The CCP formulated a strategy, advance northward while defending southward. Specifically, they let KMT forces take cities like Beijing and Shanghai, while focusing fully on advancing northeast, executing major troop redeployments. For example, as Shandong's 8th Route Army moved beyond the Great Wall, the new 4th Army relocated from North Jiangsu to Shandong, with troops from south of the Yangtze filling their vacated positions. By Sacrificing some southern territories, our forces blocked north-south transport lines, severely hindering KMT troop movements to the northeast. By October 1945, our forces in the northeast exceeded 100,000 troops. Chiang grew frantic. Just 3 days post-agreement, on October 13th, he plotted major action. He ordered all war zones to mobilize, demanding KMT forces open North China's transport routes.
Meanwhile, on October 18th, he appointed Du Yuming as Northeast Security Commander. With U.S. naval support, Du landed 2 armies directly at Qinhuangdao, advancing toward Shanhai Pass, the gateway to the northeast.
Du led 70,000 elite American armed troops, while our defenders at Shanhai Pass numbered just 10,000 with outdated gear. Thus, KMT swiftly captured the pass, breaching the northeast. On November 26th, the Kuomintang army occupied Jinzhou, a key town in western Liaoning, advancing directly toward Shenyang. Du Yuming eagerly promised Chiang Kai-shek that with additional troops, he could resolve the northeast issue within 3 months. Thus, Chiang Kai-shek deployed the fully American-equipped new 1st Army and new 6th Army to annihilate our forces completely. From March to May 1946, KMT and CCP fiercely contested the strategic location of Siping. Ultimately, KMT captured Siping with overwhelming advantage and then occupied Changchun. Advancing to the south bank of the Songhua River, this marked the peak of the KMT offensive. Why? It turned out the conflict affected U.S. interests in China. President Truman sent Marshall as envoy to mediate, demanding Chiang cease fighting in the northeast. KMT troops were already stretched thin, and guarding Jinzhou, Shenyang, Changchun, etc., left them severely overextended. Chiang Kai-shek seized the opportunity to issue a ceasefire order. Both sides then faced off along the Songhua River. Our forces recuperated on the north bank while KMT-CCP negotiations resumed. This time, the third party also joined.
The so-called third party included China Democratic League, Youth Party, and independents, representing urbanites, merchants, scholars, petty bourgeoisie.
In January 1946, KMT, CCP, and the third party held the Political Consultative Conference in Chongqing to establish post-war peace foundations. At the conference, KMT promised to convene a National Assembly soon to draft a constitution and implement democracy.
But KMT swiftly reneged. Why?
Self-interest dictated it. The entire KMT despised the agreement. Beyond Chiang, hardliners refused to open the regime or share exclusive political interests.
Share with others!
At the subsequent KMT 6 plenum, hardliners dominated completely. Chen Lifu, KMT party chief and warlord Yan Xishan warned democratic politics would destroy KMT control, invoking the anti-communist Western Hills legacy. Faction leader Dai Jitao claimed only overturning the agreement could save KMT rule. Hu Zongnan, Whampoa clique, urged Chiang to rule autocratically without compromise, a feudal imperial phrase exposing Hu's agenda. On March 17, 1946, KMT's 6th plenum passed a declaration rejecting the agreement. KMT troops then attacked CCP liberated zones, ending all peace efforts. The war erupted in full scale, and the Chinese Communist Party thus established the strategic goal of overthrowing the Kuomintang's reactionary rule and liberating all of China. And therefore, this war is defined as the Liberation War, and my narrative now moves to part 2. The shift from offense to defense. From all-out offensive to crises everywhere, Chiang Kai-shek dared to provoke full-scale war, not only with hardliner party support, but also based on his estimation of his own strength. Related to that, before the war broke out, the KMT had 4.3 million troops, 129 naval vessels, and 443 aircraft, while the Chinese Communist Party had 1.27 million troops. Oh, without an independent naval or air force, even comparing just the army, the Kuomintang held a clear advantage. By June 1946, the KMT had equipped 39 armies or divisions with American weaponry, greatly boosting firepower and mobility. Take the reorganized 11th Division as an example. Armed with over 11,000 firearms, 440 artillery pieces, and 360 vehicles. Now, in contrast, our best-equipped forces had slightly more firearms, but only 46 artillery pieces and no motorized transport. In production, the Kuomintang also surpassed us. Their arsenals produced 9,000 rifles, over 1,400 machine guns, and 875 artillery pieces monthly. Our arsenals can only make rifles, unable to produce heavy weapons. No wonder the Kuomintang brimmed with confidence top to bottom. Chief of Staff Chen Chang even shouted about eliminating communist forces in 3 to 5 months. Of course, the slogan was for show, meant for deterrence and propaganda, not to be taken seriously. Chang knew well that the Kuomintang had to deploy many troops to guard cities and transport lines, and with poor mobilization, few were actually on the front lines.
So while shouting about an all-out offensive, they could only launch focused attacks. Where was the focus?
Based on military deployments, the country was divided into 5 major battlefields: Northeast, Northwest, North China, East China, and Central Plains. Chang chose the Central Plains battlefield as the breakthrough point, with 3 layers of consideration. First, since ancient times, the Central Plains has been a contested strategic region. As they say, various heroes vie for the deer. Whoever controls the Central Plains can control the world, carrying immense political weight. Second, the Central Plains liberated area was small, our forces few, surrounded by KMT zones, making it isolated. Attacking here could deliver a preemptive blow. On June 18, 1946, Chang ordered Liu Ji, director of the Zhengzhou Pacification Office, to mobilize 14 reorganized divisions, totaling 300,000 troops, to besiege the Central Plains. Mao Zedong assessed the situation and instructed the Central Plains Field Army to avoid futile sacrifices and instead resolutely break through the encirclement. The specific approach was to feign an attack eastward to draw in the main KMT forces, while the bulk of our troops seized the chance to break through westward. This is called feint to the east, strike to the west. Ultimately, our forces preserved the core strength at the cost of over half casualties. Liu Ji, due to his slow response, was severely scolded by Chiang Kai-shek. However, the political mission of retaking the Central Plains was considered accomplished, saving face for the Kuomintang. Chiang Kai-shek judged that our forces in the Central Plains were no longer a threat, so the focus should shift to East China and Northwest. First, let's look at the East China battlefield, which includes Shandong, central and northern Jiangsu, and the Huainan and Huaibei regions of Anhui. The War of Resistance. Since the mid-period, the Chinese Communist Party re-established base areas, controlling all rural regions and most towns, with a solid foundation through long-term management. But as we know, before the War of Resistance, the KMT's ruling center was in the Jiangsu, Zhejiang, Shanghai area. With the Communist Party setting roots there, could the KMT feel at ease? After the nationalist government returned to Nanjing in May 1946, Chiang Kai-shek became even more restless, ordering Tang Enbo, commander of the 1st Pacification Zone, to quickly expel our forces from Jiangsu. Chiang's urgency led frontline commanders to be eager for achievements, advancing recklessly on separate fronts. As a result, under Su Yu's command, the Central China Field Army exploited gaps between KMT forces to infiltrate and divide them, annihilating 6 brigades totaling about 50,000 troops, historically known as the 7 Battles and 7 Victories in central Jiangsu. Seeing this, the KMT gathered more troops to adopt a coordinated, steady advance tactic, forcing the Central China Field Army to abandon Jiangsu by the end of 1946 and retreat to Shandong. The CCP Central Committee then decided to merge the Central China Field Army and Shandong Field Army into the East China Field Army, abbreviated as Huai. with Chen Yi as commander and Su Yu as deputy commander, unifying command to continue engaging the KMT forces. In May 1947, Su Yu, with his keen sense, seized a major opportunity in the war. Previously, the KMT forces advanced tightly grouped, making it hard to find weak points. Huai thus frequently maneuvered to disrupt the enemy's deployment. Sure enough, KMT units began to move out of sync, stretching the battle line into an arc, with the fastest-moving, reorganized 74th Division reaching the apex. Should they attack or not? Su Yu pondered deeply. The reorganized 74th Division, nominally a division but in size a corps, was fully American, armed with artillery and tanks, boasting strong firepower and mobility, hailed as the top of the KMT's 5 main forces, a tough nut to crack. Plus, there are over a dozen Kuomintang divisions around him. If Huai's attack fails and they get counter-encircled, the consequences would be unthinkable.
But Su Yu decided to fight. He figured the Kuomintang would never expect Huawei to focus forces on attacking the strongest, reorganized 74th Division in such a risky situation. That's called striking when unprepared.
Also, the Kuomintang army is full of factions. Commanders all want to save their own strength, and the 74th Division leader, Zhang Lingfu, was always arrogant with bad relations. If he got surrounded, others might not rescue him fully. These are all favorable factors for Huai. Just as Su Yu predicted, on May 13th, Huai units moved at full speed and surrounded the reorganized 74th Division at Menglianggu in southwestern Shandong. Hu Yang attacked with 5 columns and blocked with 4 others. After 3 days and nights of bloody fighting, they wiped out over 32,000 troops from the reorganized 74th Division and killed Commander Zhang Lingfu. Meanwhile, the surrounding Kuomintang forces dragged their feet. Some advanced 10+ kilometers, others just 3 to 5. Their slowness let Huai's main force calmly clean up the battlefield and slip through enemy gaps. The Battle of Menglianggu really showed the core differences between our army and the Kuomintang. Quote, "Our army has unified command, coordinated troop movements, and brave fighters. All this ensured our victory in the battle. On the Kuomintang side, not only was command messy, but commanders were selfish and ignored the big picture." After the battle, Chiang Kai-shek cursed angrily, saying senior officers had become warlords, corrupt, degenerate, and just saving their own skin. So, from Li Tianxia, commander of the ineffective 83rd Division, to Army Group Leader Tang Enbo were all sacked by Chiang Kai-shek. Chief of Staff Chen Cheng lost his command power, and Chiang Kai-shek himself flew to Zhuzhou to personally oversee the fighting. This time, the Kuomintang army stuck to a coordinated advance tactic to squeeze Huai's operational space. By October 1947, the KMT army took key cities like Jucheng, Laiyang, and Yantai. Our army didn't fuss over losing cities, pulling the main force back to the rugged Yamang Mountains. The exhausted Kuomintang claimed they wiped out communists in Shandong while resting, so the battlefield quieted down. Chiang Kai-shek was pleased with Shandong, and the northwest battlefield situation got him even more pumped. And since the mid-war of resistance, Chiang had ordered Hu Zongnan to blockade the Shanxi-Gunsun-Ningxia border area. After the war broke out, Hu Zongnan kept volunteering to attack northern Shanxi and capture Yan'an, the CCP's central headquarters. Chiang Kai-shek believed this matter was of great importance and demanded Hu Zongnan deploy meticulously to ensure success in one stroke. So, not until mid-March 1947 did Hu Zongnan complete his preparations, deciding to concentrate 150,000 troops for a surprise attack on Yan'an. Hu Zongnan thought he had absolute certainty, unaware of his confidential secretary. Sheng Shenghui, an underground Communist Party member, transmitted the intelligence back to Yan'an immediately. After discussion, the CCP Central Committee made a bold decision. Mao Zedong, Zhou Enlai, and others led the central and military organs to remain in northern Shanxi, while Liu Shaoqi, Zhu Dai, and others formed the Central Work Committee to cross the Yellow River eastward and resist step by step under the protection of the Northwest Field Army. By the evening of March 18th, the central leaders voluntarily abandoned Yan'an. The next day, the Kuomintang army swaggered into the city. Chiang Kai-shek sent a congratulatory message praising Hu Zongnan for his hard work, loyalty, and bravery. But Hu Zongnan knew in his heart that all he got was an empty city. He urgently ordered his troops to search for our main forces. Mao Zedong simply played along, dividing the central organs into groups of a few hundred people. Ooh! Oh! Small teams. In the gullies of northern Shanxi, they played hide-and-seek with Hu Zongnan, exhausting his troops and making them complain incessantly. Meanwhile, the Northwest Field Army seized opportunities, winning 3 battles in a row, annihilating over 14,000 Kuomintang troops and severely demoralizing them. And now, of course, this didn't stop the Kuomintang-controlled media from exaggerating wildly. They claimed that with Yan'an lost, the CCP's party, government, and military systems were destroyed, and the CCP was about to collapse. The KMT even organized a group of Chinese and foreign reporters to report from Yan'an. So-called achievements deceived the public. On the surface, the KMT did hold the advantage. The war had been going on for over a year, and the Kuomintang army kept capturing cities and territories. Among the 5 major battlefields, except for the northeast where they were on the defensive due to insufficient troops, the Kuomintang made significant progress in the Central Plains, East China, and Northwest. And so, in North China, the Kuomintang army under Fu Zui's command occupied key cities like Beijing, Tianjin, and Zhangjiakou. By mid-1947, the KMT army occupied almost all cities, controlled transportation lines, while the CCP was pushed into rural and mountainous areas. The KMT's situation looked excellent. 1. However, the author points out that the Kuomintang's victory seemed glorious, but was actually built on a fragile foundation, facing military, economic, and political crises that severely shook its rule. First, look at the military crisis. Wasn't the Kuomintang army holding the advantage on all 5 battlefields? Where did the military crisis come from? Actually, victory is just an illusion. As mentioned before, the Kuomintang army had a large total force, but only a limited number could be deployed to the front lines. At its peak, it was only about 1 million troops, and after over a year of fighting, it suffered significant losses. The Kuomintang army could conscript laborers to replenish troops, but these laborers were of poor quality, which actually reduced combat effectiveness. Plus, they had to guard towns and transportation lines, further dispersing their forces, so frontline commanders increasingly felt they had no troops available. At first, Chiang Kai-shek wasn't too worried. In his view, as long as they occupied cities and transportation lines, they could restrict our army's movement space and eventually encircle and annihilate us. Chiang Kai-shek, he applied this tactic in battlefields like the Central Plains and East China, but in reality, given China's transportation conditions back then, they could at most connect cities like Beijing, Suzhou, and Shanghai, unable to cover the countryside. Many places didn't even have decent roads, and so Kuomintang's mechanized troops couldn't deploy well. Thus, this situation formed. Kuomintang occupied cities, while the Chinese Communist Party used the vast rural areas as a rear base to recuperate and grow, called encircling the cities from the countryside. Northeast China is a prime example. Kuomintang once occupied most of it, but with only 400,000 regular and local troops, guarding such a huge territory was way too stretched. Apart from heavily guarded major cities, most towns could only be defended by regiments or battalions, making them easy to defeat one by one. Well, in contrast, the Chinese Communist Party had solid base areas with ample supplies of personnel, materials, and weapons. By May 1947, the Northeast Democratic Allied Forces had a total strength of 450,000, including 200,000 field troops, surpassing the Kuomintang forces in that region. Lin Biao believed the time for a counteroffensive had arrived. From June to September 1947, the Northeast Democratic Allied Forces launched a fierce offensive, and the Kuomintang Army retreated step by step. Ultimately, by the end of 1947, our forces had captured most of northeast China, with the Kuomintang Army trapped in major cities like Changchun, Shenyang, and Jinzhou. Northeast became the first battlefield where we achieved full dominance nationwide. Almost at the same time, Liu Bosheng and Deng Xiaoping commanded an army of nearly 120,000 to forcibly cross the Yellow River and advance into the Dabi Mountains. This move caught Chiang Kai-shek off guard, forcing him to halt attacks in the northwest and Shandong and divert troops to deal with Liu and Deng's army. Things like pressing down a gourd only for a gourd ladle to pop up kept happening in other battlefields too. The Kuomintang army was putting out fires everywhere, gradually depleting the advantages gained in mid-1947. Bad news for them since their economy could barely hold up. After 8 years of resistance war, China's economy was devastated. Post-war, instead of reviving the economy or improving livelihoods, the Kuomintang recklessly launched a war, keeping military spending sky-high. According to the budget, in 1946, the nationalist government's revenue was less than 2 trillion yuan, while expenditures hit 5.5 trillion yuan. Spending was 2.8 times revenue. Over 60% went to military expenses, meaning military spending alone exceeded total government revenue. How to fill such a huge deficit? The answer: unlimited printing of fiat currency.
Statistics show that in August 1945, fiat currency issuance was 556.9 billion yuan. By February 1947, it reached 4.8 trillion yuan, an 8.7-fold increase in just a year and a half.
As full-scale war erupted, Kuomintang's printing presses ran at full throttle, flooding the market with an extra trillion yuan monthly, causing hyperinflation. Someone calculated that 100 yuan in fiat currency in 1937 could buy 2 cows, in 1943 a chicken, in 1946 an egg, and by 1948 only a single sheet of toilet paper. This was a nightmare for urban wage earners. Even professors and low-level officials struggled, let alone ordinary people. As lives crumbled, KMT's military political elite accelerated corruption.
Take the army. Every payday, Shanghai's stock market saw massive hot money inflows.
Clearly, officers weren't paying soldiers, but instead speculating in stocks and bonds.
KMT officials at all levels invented pretexts to exploit people. Public fury boiled over. Tsinghua University President Mei Yiqi told Cheng directly why intellectuals universally opposed the KMT. Because they lived in hardship while party elites wallowed in wealth. Utterly intolerable. Politically, the Kuomintang grew increasingly unpopular. In October 1947, the KMT declared the China Democratic League an illegal organization. Immediately after, the KMT announced implementation of the Republic of China Constitution, granting citizens voting rights, property rights, free speech, etc. They postured as democratic, yet within 6 months, by April 1948, the KMT convened a National Assembly to elect Chiang as president, making his office the supreme executive power. The agency also passed the temporary provisions for the suppression of rebellion, granting the president emergency powers. Put simply, Chiang Kai-shek could exercise power arbitrarily without constitutional constraints. Chiang Kai-shek naively thought this would unite the KMT factions to jointly fight against the Chinese Communist Party. He miscalculated. The reality was that KMT factions fought fiercely over political resources. For example, Li Zongren, leader of the Guangxi clique and China's biggest rival, ran for vice president and, after some maneuvering, won. During this process, Chiang Kai-shek obstructed in every way, worsening relations with the Guangxi clique. In short, convening the National Assembly failed to save the KMT's military and political crisis. Just 1 month after China became president, the East China Field Army launched the Eastern Henan Campaign, annihilating over 86,000 enemy troops and briefly capturing Kaifeng, Henan's capital. Our army's advantage kept growing, and the KMT-CCP standoff finally moved toward strategic decisive battles. This is the main content of Part 3, the decisive battles for fate, Liusheng, Weihai, and Pingjin. After the Eastern Henan Campaign, the East China Field Army attacked Jinan. As Shandong's capital, KMT heavily fortified it, but our army conquered it in just 9 days with superior tactics, proving it could assault heavily defended cities. In early 1948, the Northeast Democratic Allied Forces were renamed the Northeast Field Army, abbreviated as Dongye. In March, Dongye recaptured the strategic location of Siping. After that, the KMT army could only scatter forces to defend cities, immobilized, while the Northwest Field Army reported frequent victories. In April, Huzhongnan was forced to abandon Yan'an, completely shattering Chiang's plan to eliminate the CCP Central Committee. By mid-1948, military strengths were KMT forces down from 4.3 million to 3.65 million, 1.98 million regulars. Our forces up from 1.2 million to 2.8 million, 1.59 million regulars. So, the troop ratio between KMT and CCP dropped from 3.6 to 1.1 at the war's start to 1.3 to 1. The KMT army had no advantage left, and morale differences were immense. In July 1947, CCP-led forces were uniformly named the People's Liberation Army. PLA soldiers shouted, "Down with Chiang Kai-shek, liberate all China," fighting bravely. In contrast, KMT senior generals pocketed salaries for non-existent soldiers and engaged in corruption, while rank-and-file troops suffered hunger and cold, unsure why they fought, with morale at rock bottom. In August 1948, Chiang Kai-shek presided over a military review conference in Nanjing, admitting the Kuomintang army was constrained at every turn, failing repeatedly, and facing existential crisis. Clearly, the strategic balance had reversed. The CCP Central Committee judged the decisive moment had arrived, with the first major campaign to erupt in the Northeast. The reason was simple. The PLA held absolute advantage in the Northeast theater. By then, the Northeast Field Army controlled 97% of land, 86% of population, and 95% of railways in the region, with nearly 1 million troops and over 5,000 artillery pieces. A formidable force indeed. The Kuomintang army was divided, guarding 3 isolated points: Changchun, Shenyang, and Jinzhou, with no rear base and severed connections, making them vulnerable to piecemeal destruction. Where to strike first? Northeast Field Army Commander Lin Biao proposed attacking northernmost Changchun first, then gradually advancing west to liberate Shenyang and Jinzhou, a low-risk approach to consume the enemy bite by bite. But Mao Zedong, CCP Central Committee chairman, feared attacking Changchun would alarm enemies in Shenyang and Jinzhou, who might abandon Changchun and retreat south of Shanhai Pass to join Fuzui's forces in North China. Thus, Mao advocated striking Jinzhou first to seal the Northeast's western gate, trapping the Kuomintang army for gradual elimination. Of course, this carried risks, especially from Shenyang between Changchun and Jinzhou, where 300,000 elite troops, including 2 of KMT's 5 main forces, New 1st and New 6th armies, were stationed. If they advanced west during the Jinzhou assault, while Chiang drove North China forces through the pass, a pincer movement could encircle the Northeast Field Army's main force. After repeated consultations, the CCP Central Committee and Northeast Field Command decided on this gambit. Target Jinzhou first. Though seemingly reckless, this was deeply calculated. First, the demoralized Northeast Kuomintang forces only hunkered defensively, avoiding mobile warfare with the PLA. Wei Lihuang, KMT's Northeast Bandit Suppression Commander, even declared troops leaving cities would face annihilation. Thus, when attacking Jinzhou, Shenyang's heavy forces wouldn't dare move. North China was another major KMT faction, whose Wei's territory where Chiang could mobilize few troops. By holding Taishan, the PLA could block forces from inside the pass. Why was Taishan the spot for Kuomintang forces to rescue Jinzhou? It's all due to the geography. Kashan is located dozens of kilometers southwest of Jinzhou, east of the Bohai Sea, west of high mountains. At its narrowest point between sea and mountains, it's only 12 li wide, perfect for blocking large enemy forces. Faithfully conveying value, interpreting great books from around the world. Hello, this is Sally's Book Talk. Today, I'll interpret the book titled The Decisive Battle for China's Fate, covering 1945 to 1949. It's the final volume of modern Chinese general history, authored by Wang Chao Wang, a renowned expert in Republic of China history and director of the Institute of World History at the Chinese Academy of Social Sciences. On August 15, 1945, Japan announced unconditional surrender. With World War II ending, the news brought nationwide jubilation. After years of arduous resistance, the Chinese people finally won precious peace. All sectors of society hoped China would break free from war and embark on a path of independent development. However, the Kuomintang regime under Chiang Kai-shek, disregarding the people's strong wishes, brazenly provoked war to eliminate progressive forces like the Chinese Communist Party, aiming to maintain its one-party dictatorship. At the war's outset, boasting control over nearly all major cities, millions of troops, and naval air superiority, the KMT arrogantly claimed they'd eliminate the communists within 3 months. Given the KMT's 4.3 million troops versus the communists' 1.27 million forces, plus disadvantages in weaponry, resources, and logistics, both domestic and international opinion then predicted an overwhelming Kuomintang victory. Unexpectedly, the Chinese Communist Party won the Liberation War in just a few short years. Throughout the conflict, the supposedly weaker communist forces achieved successive victories, steadily eliminating Kuomintang troops until liberating all China with unstoppable momentum. Why did the seemingly powerful Kuomintang fail? And how did the Chinese Communist Party rise so rapidly? These questions have persisted for decades. In the Decisive Battle for China's Fate, 1945 to 1949, the author uses the Liberation War as the main thread while examining how the Communists won and Kuomintang lost through political and economic dimensions. I'll now present this book in 4 parts, strictly following the original data and information. Part 1. Peace hopes dashed. The Kuomintang provokes war. Part 2. The strategic shift from full offensive to multi-front crisis. Part 3. The decisive campaigns, Liaoshen, Weihai, and Pingjin. Part 4. The victorious advance, crossing the Yangtze to liberate all China. Now for Part 1. The fading hope for peace. The Kuomintang provoked the war. After the war against Japan, the entire nation urgently longed for peace to rebuild their homeland. To this end, in August 1945, CCP leader Mao Zedong flew to Chongqing to meet Chiang Kai-shek, initiating KMT-CCP negotiations. On October 10th, representatives signed the Double Tenth Agreement, pledging long-term cooperation, avoiding war, and striving to build a new China that's independent, free, and prosperous. After the agreement's announcement, the whole country rejoiced. Kind-hearted people were naive. The KMT had no real peace intentions. It was just a show to lull the communists and deceive the people. In fact, during the Chongqing negotiations, the Kuomintang had already provoked military conflicts. In September 1945, KMT warlord Yan Shishan invaded the Shanxi, Hebei, Shandong, Henan liberated zone. Our forces decisively launched the Shandong campaign, wiping out 10 enemy divisions, nearly half of Yan's total troops. Afterward, Yan Xishan holed up in cities like Taiwan, never daring to launch another offensive. A larger conflict erupted in northeast China, then China's biggest industrial and grain base. With abundant Japanese left equipment, its immense strategic value made it fiercely contested. The CCP formulated a strategy: advance northward while defending southward. Specifically, they let KMT forces take cities like Beijing and Shanghai, while focusing fully on advancing northeast, executing major troop redeployments. For example, as Shandong's 8th Route Army moved beyond the Great Wall, the new 4th Army relocated from North Jiangsu to Shandong, with troops from south of the Yangtze filling their vacated positions. By sacrificing some southern territories, our forces blocked north-south transport lines, severely hindering KMT troop movements to the northeast. By October 1945, our forces in the northeast exceeded 100,000 troops.
Chiang grew frantic. Just 3 days post-agreement, on October 13th, he plotted major action.
He ordered all war zones to mobilize, demanding KMT forces open North China's transport routes. Meanwhile, on October 18th, he appointed Du Yuming as Northeast Security Commander. With U.S. naval support, Du landed 2 armies directly at Xinhuangdao, advancing toward Shanhai Pass, the gateway to the northeast.
Du Yuming led over 70,000 elite Kuomintang troops with American equipment, while our forces defending Shanhai Pass had just over 10,000 with outdated gear, so the Kuomintang quickly captured the pass, opening the northeast gate.
On November 26th, the Kuomintang Army occupied Jinzhou, a strategic town in western Liaoning, advancing directly toward Shenyang. Du Yuming eagerly promised Chiang Kai-shek that with additional troops, he could resolve the northeast situation within 3 months. Thus, Chiang Kai-shek deployed the fully American-equipped new 1st Army and new 6th Army to completely eliminate our forces. From March to May 1946, KMT and CCP fiercely contested the strategic location of Siping. Ultimately, KMT captured it with overwhelming advantage and occupied Changchun. Advancing to the Songhua River's south bank marked the peak of the KMT offensive. Why? The conflict affected U.S. interests in China. President Truman sent Marshall to mediate, demanding Chiang cease fighting in the northeast. KMT troops were already stretched thin, guarding Jinzhou, Shenyang, Changchun, etc., leaving them severely overextended. Chiang Kai-shek seized the opportunity to issue a ceasefire order. Both sides faced off along the Songhua River. Our forces recuperated north while negotiations resumed. This time, the third party joined as well. The third party included China Democratic League, Youth Party, and Independents, representing urbanites, merchants, scholars, the petty bourgeoisie. In January 1946, KMT, CCP, and the third party held the Political Consultative Conference in Chongqing to establish post-war peace foundations. At the conference, KMT promised to convene a National Assembly soon to draft a constitution and implement democracy.
But KMT swiftly reneged. Why?
Self-interest dictated it. The entire KMT despised the agreement. Beyond Chiang, hardliners refused to open the regime or share exclusive political interests. Share with others. At the subsequent KMT 6th plenum, hardliners dominated completely. Chen Lifu, KMT party chief, and warlord Yan Xishan warned democratic politics would destroy KMT control, invoking the anti-communist Western Hills legacy. So, the PLA decided to use Huang Beitao's army group as bait to lure in maximum KMT troops for annihilation. Who would take the bait? Judging by distance, Chu Qingquan's and Li Mi's armies from Suzhou were most likely to come, but these 2 crafty commanders never strayed far from headquarters to avoid being cut off. From the 12th to the 22nd, 10 full days, despite Chiang Kai-shek's repeated orders, Q and Li's armies stubbornly advanced at a snail's pace of just 2 kilometers daily. Li Yanyan's army acted similarly, except for Huang Wei's force. Hong, a first-term Whampoa graduate, known as the Emperor's disciple, remained fiercely loyal to Chiang and aggressive in combat. The problem was he was too far from Huan Beitao to arrive quickly. On November 19th, Huai launched a full assault on Huang Beitao's army. Huang resisted desperately in fierce combat. Many Huai companies dwindled to just 10 men, with officers leading charges and suffering heavy casualties. In many units, squad, platoon, and company-level officers were replaced 5 or 6 times. But our commanders and fighters, high-spirited, tightened the encirclement relentlessly. By the 22nd, Han Beitao, hopeless of rescue, committed suicide, his 120,000 troops annihilated. This left Huang Wei's halfway army stranded. Advancing was pointless, retreating required orders. While they hesitated, the Central Plains Field Army swiftly encircled them. One way was wander. Fresh from victory, Huai commanders and fighters turned immediately toward them without rest, embodying relentless combat spirit. On the 25th, just 3 days after Huang Baitao's fall, Cheng Ye and Huai encircled Huang Wei's army at Shuangduiji in modern Suzhou, NY. Huan Wei had come to rescue others.
Little did he expect to become the one needing rescue. A miserable turn.
Shuangduiji got its name from 2 10-meter mounds, Jiang Mound and Pinggu Mound. The area was cramped with no commanding heights. Over 100,000 KMT troops crammed together without proper fortifications, amid harsh winter snow with temperatures below freezing. KMT soldiers, lacking clothes and food, freezing and starving, saw combat effectiveness plummet. In contrast, during the Huaihai campaign, the PLA mobilized 5.43 million civilian laborers, delivering 960 million jin of grain and vast ammunition to the front. Thus, though outnumbered, the PLA fought a people's war with mass support, unattainable for the KMT and the root of its failure.
So, on the battlefield, scenes unfolded like this. Kuomintang soldiers starving until they saw stars, while PLA troops ate steamed buns, launching propaganda offensives.
KMT morale crumbled, with soldiers surrendering in batches. After ideological re-education, these men took up arms again, joining the PLA and fighting fiercely. Unrecognizable from their KMT days, this was a groundbreaking achievement in the CCP's political work. On December 5th, the Front Committee issued the General Attack Order. Huan Wei's army was on the brink. What were the ex-Suzhou KMT forces doing? Preparing to flee? Commander Liu Ji had been sidelined for incompetence. Deputy Du Yuming took command and ordered Qiu Qingquan and Li Mi to rescue Huan Wei. But these sly commanders repeated their snail-paced advance. When the PLA attacked, Chu's forces were still 50 kilometers from Shuangduiji. Du knew Huan Wei was doomed. With Suzhou now isolated, waiting meant death. Du decided to retreat with 5 armies to northern Anhui. Biding time. Chiang initially agreed, but as Du withdrew, he reversed.
Han Wei might still be saved. Try again!
Du had no choice but to divert 3 armies toward Shuangduiji. This played right into Su Yu's hands. He'd kept a mobile force waiting just for this. On December 6th, Du's group was encircled at Changwonzhong, 65 kilometers southwest of Suzhou. By the 15th, Huang Wei's forces were annihilated, leaving Du's group isolated. But this was still 200,000 elite KMT troops, too big to swallow whole. Now instructed Su, defend, don't attack, exhaust them first. Early on, KMT airdrops provided minimal supplies. From December 20th, blizzards in Huaibei halted airdrops, trapping the KMT without food or ammo. On January 6, 1949, Hue launched its assault. Our commanders honed effective tactics, encirclement, division, and pursuit, executed flawlessly, overwhelming the KMT. By January 10th, Du was captured, Qiu died fighting, and Li Mi escaped alone. The Huaihai campaign ended in total PLA victory. In 66 days, 5 of 7 elite KMT armies from Suzhou, 550,000 troops including elite 18 and 5th Corps, were destroyed. Adding the reorganized 74th Division, destroyed at Menglianggu, and the new 1st and new 6th armies, destroyed in the Liaoshan campaign, All 5 main forces of the Kuomintang army were completely wiped out. As Du Yuming's group faced annihilation, Chiang Kai-shek considered transferring troops from North China. But North China bandit suppression commander Fu Zuoyi wasn't part of Chiang's inner circle and wouldn't obey. Plus, Fu himself was in danger. Because as the Huaihai campaign reached its final stage, the PLA launched the Pingjin campaign. Fu Zuoyi estimated that after the Liaoshan campaign, the Northeast Field Army would need at least 6 months' rest before major action. But shockingly, while Liaoshan ended November 2nd, 1948, by the 23rd, Dong Ye's main force was already marching grandly through Shanhai Pass. By early 1949, with North China Field Army support, Dong Ye completed encirclement of KMT forces around Beijing-Tianjin. The PLA first destroyed Fu Zuoyi's foundational 35th Corps. Then they adopted an encirclement without attack strategy, temporarily not assaulting Beijing-Tianjin. Why? Because the CCP Central Committee considered Beijing a historic city, and Fu wasn't Chiang's loyalist. They hoped he'd recognize reality and spare the ancient capital from war. Persuaded by his eldest daughter Fu Dongju, an underground CCP member, Fu Zuoyi entered negotiations with the communists. Initially, Fu demanded high terms, somewhat aiming to establish his own independent domain. When talks deadlocked, the CCP decided to strike the mountain to shock the tiger, make a demonstration of force. At 10 a.m. on January 14th, Dong Ye launched a full-scale attack on Tianjin.
By the next afternoon, they captured the entire city, annihilating 130,000 KMT troops.
It proved holding the city was impossible. On January 21st, 1949, the CCP and Fu Zuoyi reached an agreement. Beijing was peacefully liberated, concluding the Pingjin campaign. Lasting 2 months, the KMT lost 3 army groups, totaling over 520,000 troops, including 250,000 who switched sides. Thus concluded the 3 major campaigns: Liaoshan, Huaihai, Pingjin. In 14 days, the PLA wiped out 1.54 million KMT troops at a cost of 250,000 casualties. Total PLA victory, total KMT defeat. The war reversed completely. My narrative now enters part 4, victorious advance across the Yangtze. After the 3 campaigns, PLA strength reached 3.58 million. While the KMT had only 2.04 million left. Elites gone, morale shattered. Military defeat led to political failure. Chiang Kai-shek, having lost his core forces, could no longer suppress opposition. Facing opposition from factions like the Guangxi clique, financial collapse, and U.S. aid refusal, they reached a dead end. On January 1st, 1949, Chiang issued a New Year's statement admitting failed leadership and resigning. Presidential duties transferred to Guangxi Quick leader and Vice President Li Zongren. On January 21st, Li became acting president, the Guangxi clique's first and last peak in Chinese politics. Li had his own plans. Confident in Guangxi's remaining forces, he believed he could still maneuver. He then telegrammed CCP chairman Mao Zedong proposing peace talks. On March 24th, the Nanjing government sent Zhang Jizang, Xiao Lizi, and others to negotiate in Beijing. The KMT delegation demanded, "Playa, don't cross the Yangtze. Let's split China at the river." The CCP firmly rejected this attempt to split the country, causing talks to collapse. On the evening of April 20th, 1949, advance forces successfully landed on the Yangtze's south bank. On April 21st, Mao and Zhu De ordered nationwide advance.
Destroy all resisting KMT forces, liberate the people, defend China's sovereignty.
That night, 1 million PLA troops attacked along a 1,000-line front. Soldiers raised banners reading, "Cross the Yangtze, liberate all China," as KMT defenses crumbled. On April 23rd, Nanjing, KMT's political center, was liberated. By the 27th, Suzhou fell. The East China Field Army neared China's largest economic hub. On May 27th, Shanghai was liberated. PLA forces fanned out nationwide, crushing remaining KMT resistance. In late November 1949, PLA captured Guilin, Guangxi's capital, and Li Zongren's base. Losing his power center, Li fled to the U.S. via Hong Kong. What was Chiang Kai-shek doing during this time? In short, manipulating Li Zongren while securing his own escape. First, about controlling Li.
Though resigned as president, Chiang remained KMT chairman, outranking Li within the party.
Chiang Kai-shek used this position to remotely control things, making acting President Li Zongren unable to mobilize troops or control the purse strings. For example, before the KMT-CCP peace talks, Li Zongren ordered the release of the masterminds of the Xi'an incident to show sincerity.
Without Chiang Kai-shek's approval, Zhang Shuiliang and Yang Huchen couldn't make it happen.
Ultimately, Zhang Shuiliang was taken to Taiwan and kept under house arrest, while Yang Hucheng was brutally killed. Next, let's talk about Chiang Kai-shek preparing his escape route. Before stepping down, Chiang knew the mainland couldn't be held, and the Nanjing government would face defeat, so he started preparing an escape route. Quote, considering the PLA Navy's limited strength and inability to cross the sea, he chose Taiwan.
In January 1949, Chiang appointed his confidant, Chen Cheng, as governor of Taiwan, overseeing military, civil affairs, and finance, turning it into the Chamti's final stronghold.
At the same time, Chiang ordered the central bank to ship tens of thousands of taels of gold, silver, and large amounts of US dollars to Taiwan. This was obtained by the KMT regime through exchanging with the people using gold yuan notes, which had become worthless paper, while the real gold and silver ended up in Chiang's hands. Chiang's ability to establish a foothold in Taiwan relied on this massive wealth.
The Chiang dynasty was on the brink of collapse.
The Chinese Communist Party accelerated the pace of establishing a new China. As early as during the three major campaigns, the CCP invited democratic figures like Shen Junru, Li Zhixin, A Shangning, and Zhang Naji to discuss national affairs. In June 1949, the CCP and various democratic parties, non-party Democrats, and people's groups totaling 134 people gathered at the Hall of Diligent Governance in Zhongnanhai to hold the preparatory meeting for the Political Consultative Conference. To distinguish it from the 1946 Political Consultative Conference, this meeting was called the New Political Consultative Conference. On September 21, 1949, the first plenary session of the New Political Consultative Conference opened. The meeting discussed and approved the new nation's name, People's Republic of China, capital, Beijing, national anthem, March of the Volunteers, and national flag. The five-starred red flag established the social nature of New China as a new, democratic, and people's democratic state, and elected the Central People's Government Council and its chairman, vice chairman, and so on. Mao Zedong was elected as chairman, and Zhu Dai, Liu Shaoqi, Song Qingling et al. Were elected as vice chairman. On October 1, 1949, the founding ceremony was grandly held at Tiananmen Square in Beijing, with 300,000 military and civilians gathered, eagerly, awaiting. At 3 p.m., Lin Bok, Secretary General of the Central People's Government Council, declared the commencement of the ceremony.
The chairman, vice chairman, and members of the Central People's Government took their positions. Chairman Mao Zedong solemnly proclaimed the establishment of the Central People's Government of the People's Republic of China. Now,
as the March of the Volunteers played, Chairman Mao pressed an electric button, and the five-starred red flag slowly rose. Then came a grand military parade. Zhu Dai, Commander-in-Chief of the People's Liberation Army, reviewed the troops and issued orders to swiftly eliminate all remaining Kuomintang reactionary forces.
liberate all yet unliberated territories. Witnesses to this historic moment erupted in thunderous cheers. Long live the People's Republic of China! The slogan resounded through the skies.
A new chapter unfolded in Chinese history. All right, that concludes our interpretation of the decisive battle for China's fate, 1945 to 1949. Find reading notes below the audio. See you next time.